He's not gonna be here today,
flavor yet?
so he decided to take off to get the 5 agenda. So we'll, 12 o'clock, we'll call the June 19th infrastructure committee meeting to order. Melissa?
Okay, Steve Bruner will be absent. Keith here.
Here.
Jen Reiner. Here. Fred Noble.
Here.
And Dave Reeser.
Here. Is there public comment? Mr.
Yes, sir.
Cade.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I'm gonna read this time. I'm trying to stay on time. Good afternoon, committee and council members. First, I'd like to address the notice of violation filed against my property in November. This has led to a drawn-out appeal process, which has resulted in a significant legal cost for both parties. The borough, funded up by taxpayers, has had to shoulder these expenses. As a resident and taxpayer, I have filed a right to know request to obtain these costs in the spirit of transparency and fiscal responsibility. I also want to bring to your attention the considerable personal legal costs that I've had to bear. As of my April invoice, from Fox Rothschild, these costs have totaled $42,369. And this does not yet account for the legal services in May and June. I'm frustrated that these considerable resources and time have been expended in this matter. This situation could have been avoided had our concerns been addressed and handled amicably. However, during the infrastructure meeting in November, the chair, Mr. Steve Bruner, disregarded my objections. As an elected official seeking re-election this year, I asked Mr. Bruner to reflect upon the impact of his decisions on the community he represents. Council President and Infrastructure Committee member, Mr. Bill Jenks, mentioned at last meeting that residents have been reaching out to him with their concerns. While it is commendable that some residents feel comfortable in doing so, I asked the council why certain members of our community, including myself, do not receive the same level of engagement or consideration. In previous meetings, I've raised the possibility of discrimination. As first-generation immigrant from Eastern Europe, I feel that the council has not extended the same level of care and communication to me as to other residents. I recognize this is a sensitive topic, but it is a matter of public concern that warrants attention. The drawn-out nature of this legal dispute has not only resulted in unnecessary costs, but has also considerably delayed our renovation plans. The funds used for legal fees could have been invested in our property, which would have benefited the local community and tax base. I stand here today as a concerned resident who believes in fairness, transparency, and respect. These principles should be at the heart of our community and local governance. I urge all the council members to reflect on these points and to strive to uphold these standards. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Since Steve's not here, Michelle can get a copy of that letter?
Sure.
Pass it on. Zoning and codes report?
The report's pretty self-explanatory. There were multiple hearings on May 9th for different properties before the zoning hearing board. All of the relief that was requested was granted. Otherwise, two properties that I think stand out to me on the property maintenance code report, 1554 Penn Avenue. I've been back and forth in conversation with Jeff from Kraft's office. The property's been vacant for 2+ years. The water's been shut off for the same amount of time. There's enough going on there that we can send it through the county's blighted property review committee, which we've had tremendous success with in the past. I don't believe I need a formal motion from the committee to do that. There's no cost to the borough to send it through that process. Just
Which property is this?
1554 Penn Avenue. It's a residential rental property on Penn Avenue. You wouldn't have noticed it minus the fact the grass
Which
was.
100 block that is.
Yes, you
Oh,
wouldn't have
okay.
noticed it other than it's a couple houses down from Meister Cox Architects.
Okay, all right.
Before Evans,
I'm sorry?
before Evans, not before.
Correct.
Yes, it's before Evans.
Okay.
The grass was probably 2+ feet high there up until about a week or so ago when our contractor came in and cut it and will continue to do so. They did that last summer, so, I will tell Jeff to start the paperwork to send it through the county's process. There's also 5 properties will be moving forward with civil suits due to lack of compliance for zoning violations. They're almost all for parking on the grass. And Joe, did you get a chance to,
I think I'm going after, that's the other one, I would say, most likely that will.
there's a question about 1634 Far Road and if there was an update, to move forward with filing a citation, so Joe's gonna check on that one as soon as the meeting's over. So if anybody had any other specific questions about anything on the very comprehensive list of properties, feel free to ask.
Anybody?
Do you have a list of how many rental properties you inspect, how many pass, how many?
That's on the cover sheet,
Okay.
so you can see 23 rental permits, 53 issued, that was as of the end of May.
Okay, but it doesn't say how many flunk.
How many?
Flunk the inspectors,
No, we've never given that information, I mean, we could,
do you have a really ballpark? Few?
I don't get them until everything's closed out, or they're not doing what they're supposed to, and we file a citation. Joe, do you have an idea off the top of your head?
When the inspector came to our property, we were told that everything previous day had flunked. It wasn't for major stuff, but this raised the question of how frequently that happens.
I think that would be more or less your definition of flunk. I mean, it's I haven't done a rental for a while, but, there's different degrees of
Oh,
failing.
absolutely. Absolutely, and it was
I don't know that
minor
there's,
stuff.
at this juncture, we don't get a lot that are really, really, really bad.
Good.
And my guess is in that case, it was probably all non-working smoke detectors.
You know,
That's a hard no.
That's one of the typical, the tenant takes batteries out or takes them down, because they go off this round and then they go away. But yeah, they're typically, from my experience, year to year, you don't typically, a lot of stuff gets improved year after year. Okay, anything else? Dave, Western Berks?
Okay, the continuing saga with Warren Street. The engineers are in the process of developing a traffic control plan, because, the work is gonna have to be done on a live highway, so they have to issue a plan, then PennDOT will review it and get back to us. Now, there is something that will give us some comfort. Rawa has assured us that if there was a problem with water backup, they could jerry-rig a pipe under the Buttonwood Street within 2 or 3 hours. Temporary, obviously, but if we would need the water, they could just pipe down through the Buttonwood Street Bridge and up into West Reagan, help us with the backup. It's better than nothing, but until PennDOT gets off their ass,
I thought we found out you didn't need to do anything with that, or they didn't do anything with that. Is that what you said, Jim?
I was told that, not that as a golf university, again. So you have a bridge occupancy license allows you to do maintenance.
well, now they want a traffic control plan.
Well, they want lots of things, but what they're entitled to according to the bridge license is different. When you call PennDOT and go, do we need a permit to do this? Yes. They're not looking at your bridge occupancy license, they all allow you to do maintenance of your facilities as part of the bridge license, and you pay an annual fee as a utility to have that license.
Although it's Rawa's pipe, now I don't know if that makes any difference, we really don't own the pipe, so,
Well, but somebody's fixing it, so you're,
right,
I mean, it's Rawa's bridge license.
so maybe they're not, but at least we have some comfort, yeah,
Totally.
hey, I rag our engineer every meeting at Express, I mean, it's so frustrating.
I mean, according to Daryl, he said you can't do anything on a bridge, period. But he said he's seen cases where crews were out just putting up signs and police showed up with handcuffs ready. So I don't know what the risk
PennDOT's
is.
police, PennDOT has police now? The city police are gonna arrest the Rawa staff? That'd be interesting. Well, it's just because you asked PennDOT The answer is yes, you need a permit because you're in a right of way, they don't even bother to look at. And maybe they do need a traffic control plan, but that's already
Well, they do need a traffic control.
but that's all pre-established in your manual for traffic control. All they gotta do is follow one of the sample, short-term, long-term,
It's easy for
stationary
you to
moving
say,
lighting
but
detail.
I'm just telling you.
I think ultimately, like any concerns about whether a permit or not is needed, it just needs to go to SSM or directly to WAWA. Because we just get the
SSM is
information.
driving it, and of course, it's raw well light, and we keep bugging them. I don't know what else we can do.
Yeah. No, I saw Matt at Walmart in the parking lot after the golf outing, and we talked for 25 minutes about this on Thursday afternoon.
And any update on that?
I said, have your engineer call me. I said, or pull out a copy of the bridge license and give it to your engineer.
Well, you would think the engineer would know that.
But he's, I don't know, can't tell him, you know.
Well, again, the bridge license is probably with WAWA and us.
Yeah, and maybe it's Robert's holding it up, I don't know. They said it's Robert's pipe. But at least
If it
we
was
put
our
that
pipe, we would
back
already,
up
if it was our pipe, we would
under
already
Butler
have fixed it.
Bridge. I understand they're gonna redo that whole bridge after they just built it, because they're gonna expand the bypass. They're gonna add lanes, and that's gonna affect the bridge. So they're gonna have to redo the whole bridge again.
That's a
I
separate
understand.
project.
So that's another subject.
I don't know if that's
That
true or
project,
not.
yeah, that project's
Really?
never been shelved.
I told me they were gonna expand the bypass, and that was gonna affect the bridge.
They're going to, widen the shoulders in the roadway as you're coming off of 222, coming from Broadcasting, you're getting off the ramp for 222 South. Up onto the Warren Street and then to the Crossing Drive ramps. So they're, from what I understand, they're above that and it's just shoulder widening.
Really?
Roadway widening.
Yeah,
I don't think they're touching the bridge.
that's what they told, did they say that to the last meeting, Chris? About the Buttonwood Street Bridge?
They said,
This is the top
they-
of Hockin Bridge I'm talking about.
yeah, but for
No, I'm talking about
Buttonwood,
the Buttonwood Street Bridge.
what I recall is they said
Oh, I don't know.
Buttonwood,
Buttonwood Street.
Buttonwood is somehow related to some other larger project that would require further work on Buttonwood in the coming years. And because of that, WAWA decided they didn't want to invest any money in repairing that pipe. So instead, they went out and immediately bought all the parts that they would need to emergently run a line over the bridge if we needed one.
If we need a
Okay then.
So that's all I had to report.
Jim, do you want to talk about the water main replacement, or is it just have to approve that?
Well, I do need to comment on it. This is payment application number 2. We are gonna go over budget based on a decision I felt I made, and I think it's the right decision. This invoice was mainly for the trench restoration on Trent Avenue. And the main was probably 6 feet off the east curb line. And usually it's a 4-foot width trench to pave. We hit some rock that made the trench wider, plus between the edge of the trench and the eastern curb line, there would be 2 feet of old blacktop there. So they took all that blacktop too, so basically half the road is new, which we hadn't planned on. And usually, and I was planning on it with this one, as we did on Cardinal Road, Cherrywood Road, we paved the road a year after we put the main in, out of water funds. And we won't have to do that here. That Trent Avenue is now gonna be good for the next 10 years, at least. So we are gonna go over budget, but I think it was a prudent
So
decision.
the original
Do more
was,
paving than expected.
the original was 336,000, we're talking so we're talking $12,000.
No, the extra paving costs around 38 grand. It's a lot of, it's real money, but we won't have to pave the road.
So this contract, so it's 348 plus 38,000.
Let me grab the.
Because the original water main replacement for Trent was 336,000.
Well, there was,
We had a
there was
change
change order
Okay.
to add the.
348, okay.
All the other pay items in there came in dead on, except the paving. But now we don't have to pave the road, which we typically would have done in the past.
Okay.
And it's a unit, price contract, so it's based on while we bid it with quantities, it's just that quantity of paving restoration increased.
Can that portion of it be paid out of liquid fuels?
As I always understand,
You
the
don't
water
use liquid
funds,
fuels
the
for
water
paving.
fund's pretty
can't?
Yeah, the
good.
borough does not use liquid fuels for paving.
Yeah.
We use liquid fuels for salt, street lights. You don't wanna use liquid fuels for paving unless you have to.
And you get
Then
PennDOT
then you get
involved.
Charlie Paris here. Things we can do in 2 days take
Because I mean,
7
we
months
have,
to
we
get an
have
answer on.
excess from what we save in liquid fuels, but not in general
Yeah.
fund. If it's an issue, that we
This would have to be pre-approved by Charlie and given a
Alright,
project number
yeah,
prior to
never mind.
bidding,
Okay.
and then to be put on eligible.
So we need a motion to pay application number 2 in $75,414.75. We have a motion and a second. Right? Jan? No.
Second.
Okay, second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Any?
Just to be clear, is that paving in this payment order, or is there gonna be?
All
a
we're holding
change
now is
order?
5% reduction
Was there a prior change order approved?
Yes,
for the park barn paving.
not on paving.
So are we gonna have a
That's
change
down.
order on the
No,
paving?
I don't think
We'll
there
have a
needs to be.
we'll have a rectifying change order at the end of the project, like we do on every project, for the actual, where we zero out the difference between the bid quantity and the actual quantity.
All right, I just wanna make sure that that loop is closed.
Yes, we do that on the end, we do that at every project, that's the reconciling change order completion. That way, and if you ever get audited, everything matches your contractor's payments with the final contractor amount.
All right, thank you.
Okay. UCMR sampling?
That's going as planned. Nothing else to add on that. The second one, asbestos sampling, once every 9 years, we have to get 2 samples for asbestos. Suburban Testing Labs does our other testing, and they are going to do this asbestos training. I don't suspect we'll have any issues. But I do have an item D there in regard to lead. I've spoke about this before, about this new lead rule, and by October of next year, we have to report to the DEP an extremely large amount of information in regards to lead service lines. My suspicion is they're gonna have to extend that because nobody's going to be able to comply with this thing. It's so voluminous. We're going between I've talked to West Reading, Shillington, and Western Berks. I believe to help us, we may, and we're early on in this, we have to talk to a few engineering groups that have a section of their company that this has become cottage industry of complying with this lead law, to see how they can assist us in filling out these documents in regards to lead. I think as a whole, the borough doesn't have an issue. I've never seen lead anywhere. We have an ordinance from 1940 or 48 that dictates copper only. But
That's true.
I don't have to worry about the hill, that's BA there. Yeah. So I think we'll come out of this pretty good, but to prove to DEP that we're good is voluminous.
You have to do inspections of the residential and business connections. And
And it could get, I don't think it will, but it could get ugly, because just seeing what pipe comes through the wall of the house is not good enough. They're saying, well, what if 5 feet outside the wall, it changes? That's the crazy scenario where you may have to dig up everybody's front yard, you know, it's that kind of craziness. So I think it would be prudent for us as a group, as the Western Berks group, to hire a professional to kind of guide us through this thing.
so what is that, is that first deadline to show that you have a plan of action? or-
Exactly, to show that you have a plan.
So that's.
And just complying with that is gonna be difficult.
And And when's that for, next year?
It has to be done by October of next year.
Sounds like somebody is gonna make a little business out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
The state said it's
But isn't you said since 46 it had to be copper, so
48, I think.
48, so every house built after 48 should be in compliance.
So there's a
Should
lot
be.
that were built
I just
before.
don't know if that's,
Right, yeah.
they might say that's not good enough.
That's, okay.
I don't know. We literally have to list every home or property tax levy, and for each roughly 2,400 connections we have, it's a row of 50 different questions you have to answer, you know.
Is there a checkbox on our plumbing permits, lead or no lead, materials?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, we've had that ordinance in place since, like Jim said, sometime in the forties, and historically, I've always been told Davey Wall, the former plumbing inspector, was maniacal about has to be copper, has to be copper, has to be copper. I mean, we still get calls from plumbers that are like, I can only use copper, right? No,
Nowadays,
not.
they wanna use plastic as
Yeah.
opposed to lead, they wanna use plastic, gotta be copper.
But it sounds like what they're gonna actually need to see to sign off on it is above and beyond what any municipality can pull together in 24 months.
Should the ordinance be revised to permit plastic?
No, I think copper's really good. And once it gets into the house, it can be plastic,
Yeah.
as far as I know.
You got a baby
What's
born
out?
rolling over.
Well, and I mean, ultimately, the building code's gonna dictate what can be used as well in certain cases.
Yeah, inside the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Service lateral, it's kind of
Copper.
municipality. What do you want to talk about sanitary sewer?
Sanitary sewer is a payment app number 172,382. That is for manhole winding that has been completed.
That's within budget, right?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we, make payment application number 1, with a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Guys have it. Procure Boulevard Pump Station.
Any hot news there, Jim?
No. Nothing. We just
Waiting
have
for the
the-
contractor.
Waiting for the contractor to give us his completed shop drawings in to review.
Okay, so it's been awarded.
Yes.
West Lawn Interceptor,
Um,
Bids and, um,
I was gonna say the May CFA meeting got kicked to July, so we won't have an update on the grant request until July. Otherwise,
July this year.
yes, correct,
But it sounds like we've got support from our local representatives.
yes. And because it's a multi-municipal project, that checked a couple of extra boxes on the grant app that got us automatic bonus points, so that's good.
All right.
And Keith, before we leave sewers, Jim and I are gonna go look after this meeting, as his guys were doing some survey work for future State Hill Road sewer improvements before the State Hill Road work starts. There's a manhole in front of the liquor store, basically, in Woodland Road, where when the Berkshire Boulevard pump station runs, it's pumping it uphill. It's the first manhole where it starts going down gravity towards State Hill. There's a 8-inch cast iron pipe that comes into that manhole, and it has a hole in the side of it. So when the pump station is running, a great portion of the sewage is doing what it should do, but some of it is squirting out the side of this crack in this pipe. And over time, it's gonna eat away at the wall of this manhole and cause some problems in Woodland Road. So I wanna look at it with Jim. It may be one of those things where we have a emergency repair contract with Slough, and we may have them come out and look at it to see what it would take to fix that.
Is that something to line then, or you have to?
No, I think you're gonna have to dig it up and put it in. We'll probably know more next week.
Where's the pump station start? Where's that line?
That's, down at the shop supply, you see that, I call it the new shopping center, the one that's half empty now.
Oh, okay.
It's down in the hole down there, and it pumps it up, a pipe up Woodland Road.
Okay.
Okay, streets,
We opened bids for 50/50 sidewalk. Allstel Construction was the low bidder at $102,994.88. Allstel does a lot of concrete work in the borough. He's a small company compared to the ones who have done it in the past. But he's more than capable, he does good work. And the price is a couple pennies more than it was last year per square foot.
Big difference between this contract and the other ones. There's quite a bit of difference between the different
Price-wise,
contracts.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
We need a bid.
so we had budgeted 50,000 originally.
Yeah, we'll get, now it depends on the quantity of each house, but, in black and white terms, we would be paying around 51,000.
Okay. Right. And the homeowner would pay the, that. Okay.
We'll be putting out
Right.
103,000, but hopefully recouping 50,000.
Hopefully. Streets improvements,
Need a motion to approve.
Motion for action on that bid.
oh, so we have a motion to recommend to council to accept the bid from Austell Construction for $102,994.88. I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Guys have it. Streets,
Payment application number 2 from CMS, $128,266.43. This is mostly for concrete work.
I'll make the recommendation to council, motion to recommend to council pay application number 2 for $128,266. We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend to council to make payment application number 2. All in favor? Opposed? Guys have it. Anything else under streets, Jim?
No.
Highway lighting?
John has told me when his officers went out at night, there's a ramp J, which is the ramp to the flyover to go to 222 north, that some of the lights there were not working. So I need to go back to Telco to see what the story is there. In addition to that, I was just venting to Jim before the meeting, PennDOT, and nobody communicates, PennDOT wants to put in new foundations for some new highway signs in that same area, in at Reading, some of the ramps. And I get one call today, you get this document that says you have utilities in the area, mark them. And the one calls are so vague and such a big area, I can't make hide nor hair out of it. And my concern is, this is the area we just spent the $15,000 on the street lighting, and they're gonna go dig in the shoulder and put new signs up and wreck the conduit again.
And they're not responsible for replacing
They are?
They are if they damage your.
Yeah, but we can't mark it. It would take somebody from Telco 3 days to mark this area. And I don't wanna do that. I want them to put a white mark on the shoulder, this is where,
Well, you're supposed to do.
this is where we're gonna dig this hole.
You're supposed to paint the limits of your one call in white paint and write the contractor name and your one call serial number, and then that's so that everyone knows what to
So
mark.
if they identify where they're gonna put the hole, you can tell
Then
them.
I gotta get Telco to mark.
Just for that
trace these
spot.
lines Just for that spot,
Right,
which would take them a couple hours.
right.
But, to mark the whole area out there is a big deal. So I responded to that one call, I said, don't dig, we don't have enough information. And we'll see what that prompts.
So you're saying we haven't put any white marks in so
Yeah.
far?
No, and the description of where these signs are going is too vague to understand, it's very vague. Somewhere on this ramp, somewhere on Route 222, what good is that, you know?
They don't build themselves. Did we get a bill for repairing the highway lighting yet?
Yes, we did.
Okay. PennDOT State Hill Road improvements.
Council approved last week the letter being sent to PennDOT. Jim's gonna send that.
That's drafted.
To oppose putting in the roundabout at,
Pen and line missing bullet order.
You say you sent that letter.
No, they authorized me to write.
Oh, you haven't done it yet.
A couple of things.
So is there any other action that we're supposed to do with all this about the roundabouts?
At this point, no.
Okay, this is just informational at this point,
Yes.
okay. All right, Cambridge Avenue stream work,
I have an update on I don't think there is any update on Cambridge Avenue other than.
No, other than we have everything, we're working with the bid documents. This was just, it came up at last meeting, which bridge was selected,
which one was selected?
Yeah, which one was selected?
one at the top.
Okay.
Oh,
Big price difference.
Yeah, and that is kind of what was driving it back when this committee discussed it in 2019.
Right, and then we were saying that probably most of you didn't see it back then, to even know what the options were. And it looks better than the TV.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, it
TV
looks good.
picture's a lot
You
better.
can see it up here.
The deciding thing was the wooden decking on, it'd just be rotting.
On on one at the
Yeah.
bottom, and then obviously
Yeah.
Sorry.
the middle one there is very expensive.
Yeah. the
Yeah.
track-
Gorgeous, but.
Yeah, it looks really nice,
No,
but
I don't know, I think the top looks just as nice. I mean,
Yeah.
it almost looks
The top.
plasticky, the middle one. I don't know that really fits in
I have
with
some
the
kind of
environment.
plastic or something.
It's
Composite
tricky.
decking.
I think it was composite decking on
Composite.
the
I mean, I think it
That'll
looks
never
too
done.
modern for that area.
fiberglass.
Yeah, it's a non-composite. Fiberglass is what we're getting, and then
Right.
like
Like
steel,
one
steel
word.
truss with wood decking, it's where that was the most expensive.
Yeah, probably. Okay,
So as
so,
long as there's no change to that, if we're still going with the same bridge, it was just, no, probably a lot of people hadn't seen the three options that are on the committee today.
right,
So we figured when the question came up, we'd just show you what was decided on years ago.
okay,
So what's the price now? Has that changed since this?
Oh, God, yeah. It's probably double or triple that.
Wasn't like originally 250,000?
Yeah.
so no action required there at this point?
Nope.
Okay. Green light and go program,
The work's been completed, the final invoices were approved by finance, right, because we had to get them in for the cutoff.
Yes, those were approved by council last week.
Right. So, I believe everything's done with
Yeah,
that, Jim,
that's
right?
done,
Done and.
other than getting our money.
Right. Done, we paid the contractor and we're waiting for the PennDOT reimbursement for that.
so nothing more to be done with that for 18 or 19, if we need to take no action, we're just waiting for.
That
the
should
money to
probably
come.
come off the
We
agenda.
probably
Yes.
take, we probably take that off now,
Gonna
because
say take it off.
the only thing happening will be money coming into the
Yeah,
borough.
just put it
from
on the
PennDOT.
finance line for the finance committee to monitor the.
I'm sure Phyllis will do that anyways
Yeah.
as part of her overall
Right.
recaps.
Yep.
I'll put to remove those. Floor.
So, number 13. We've sent the appraisals to the two owners of the two properties we looked at. I had a discussion with Steve this morning about a couple of things. Steve wanted me to mention that he is still of the opinion that we need to continue to look at and keep open mind about all of our potential options. For his words were, we need to make sure we don't have any other options on property we own like this building. So I think that's gonna come up in the future.
What is he asking for,
And
Well,
we
his-
estimate
on renovating this?
Steve's thought was, I mean, this is just, he and I had a discussion this morning, and he threw it out, he's on vacation. Building a building in the parking lot and paving the front of the building for parking.
So I think your next step with that would be to either go back to Olson or to go to Meister and say, this is an option, we need a cost estimate to go along with it.
That's where Steve was at this morning, so let's wait till he gets back. But I'm just saying, we're still waiting for an answer from the other property owner anyway.
He was guessing, he didn't actually have the breakdown.
So I think this is a huge step. And like I said in previous meetings, we cannot take this lightly, and we need to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Do you wanna potentially talk about that at finance, just to keep it moving?
We can.
Okay.
But part of the other thing is number 14, so that Steve and I, when we had a discussion this morning, we were both in agreement that 13 and 14 have to be done simultaneously. The discussions and the cost estimates for 13 and 14 need to be done simultaneously. Or a solution to 13 and 14. We think we have, I think we're gonna talk about it next, but I think we have a potential solution, or at least a short-term, couple years solution for 14, so.
A 5-year plan that'll allow us time to plan on a 10 to 15-year plan.
Well, that was, so,
So
anyway, so 13, at this point, we can move on to finance. We're waiting for an answer from the other property. Steve wants to have some more discussion. I think we have to have continued discussions about it.
We do need to discuss holding the July or August infrastructure meeting at the fire station.
Is that on this part of the,
Yeah, it's under 13, the last bullet point.
Last bullet.
I'm fine with it. I don't,
Does the committee have a preference which month?
I don't think.
We'll make sure the air conditioning's working.
And the purpose for that is to let the infrastructure see the inside of the building.
Correct. So
Okay.
we could do it, I mean, because it's part of a public meeting, it's just easier to do everything there, that we're not adjourning here, reconvening up there, because the public will be able to.
As long as it doesn't turn into a personnel discussion with the firefighters.
No,
Okay.
it,
Because it would need to pertain to the topic of infrastructure.
correct, and
Not
then,
negotiating with the firefighters.
that is understood, and I don't think this committee would be the appropriate one to negotiate
It would
with
not
them.
be, but if we're there and they decide they wanna have the discussion. So, just so that's clear.
I prefer August, I'll be out of town.
Okay,
So let's make sure we accommodate.
Well, I'm just saying. No way, I think there's something.
And I think I mentioned this, I know the chief's here, and I know we have some ongoing immediate needs for renovations or space constraints in the police department, as well as administration. I think we need to continue to start, this is not gonna be an overnight process. So if we have immediate needs, we need to think of some out-of-the-box solutions to solve some of those immediate needs. I don't know what the out-of-box solution is. I mean, to be honest, turn this into the women's locker room, below the meetings down at Borough Hall, down in the library. That's the extreme of how much we need to figure out how to accommodate the short term until we can come up with a long-term solution. And whatever long-term, it's just my opinion now, but the long-term solution isn't gonna be an overnight decision. It's not gonna be an overnight solution. So if we've got immediate problems, we need to think about, I mean, is there a house across the street for rent? Can we rent it for a year?
No reason we can't
so
go down to the fire station.
you're getting into a whole complication with building code issues, and I would think actually the easier would be like the construction trailer parked in the front.
Okay? I'm just saying, if we have immediate needs that are absolutely necessary to be resolved, we need to figure out a way to resolve them. And don't count on this to resolve them in the short term.
But I guess, John, depending on what happens with hiring, we'll have to address that.
I'm just throwing this out, this is my opinion, so the rest
I
of
agree with
council
you,
and the rest of the
absolutely.
committee,
I agree with you,
speak up, but,
I agree.
Once we choose
and,
a solution, it'll take forever to implement, so.
yeah, so he's got immediate needs, if you've got immediate needs, we need to solve them.
Right, we need a stopgap.
As far as renting a house across the street, we'll ask for permission, we'll ask for forgiveness, not permission. Sometimes you gotta do that. Sorry, codes guy. Yeah, you heard it now.
It's okay.
I didn't hear any of that.
No reason they can't go down to the fire station.
Just saying.
I don't know, I mean, I think that that's a discussion. I'm worried about having the ability to have the same types of facilities. And if we're gonna make females leave this facility to go somewhere else, I worry, just off the top of my head, is that a potential for us that we're not accommodating that?
If we have a fire in the police department tomorrow, we're gonna find a solution of where to house you.
Right.
And we have a situation where we have a problem. Nobody, I don't think anybody at this table or anybody on council is saying, figure it out, do whatever you have to do, and you're never gonna get any help. I think we're saying, you have a problem, we're trying to solve it, but it's not gonna be an overnight solution. And I think everybody on council admits that we need to do something, it's just a question of when. And the time frame. Public Works, so you came up with I have no idea if $80,000 is the right number. Is that what this traditionally costs to do? Is that a normal?
To do the bid construction documents, it was 165 we did last time.
Okay.
So this is reduced scope, we say there's some level of effort saved, especially like our site stuff is very minimal, because we just made some minor changes. Now the architects and structural and mechanical electrical engineers, they're basically starting over.
Okay.
So,
So before I move forward, so Jim and Greg, the solution that they're coming up with now, which is the reduced scope of redesign. So I know how to vote on this thing. If solving every one of your problems is 100%, what percentage does this solve?
This is a good plan we came up with. We scaled it back to what we need for now, and we set it up so we can add on to it in the future in small segments.
Okay.
And we're utilizing some of the space that we do have for office, and making the other space for the guys and the equipment in the garage.
So when we put the shop pictures up to show us what our garage looks like compared to everybody else's garage around the area, what their lunchroom looks like and their locker room looks like, and the trucks that were parked on top of each other inside, does this new plan solve those kinds of problems?
It's a plan that solves some of it now, but is set up realistically and financially to continue to grow as we can. And yeah, it does. It will have a nice.
Which I think is a great idea.
It'll have a positive effect. It's not the end all,
No.
but it's devised in a way that we can add additional garage space or storage space in the future.
So when this is completed, what percentage of the problems will it solve for you?
It'll solve crampedness in the locker rooms, lunchrooms, and the office space. We'll have some privacy if we want to have a meeting. We'll have a
Women's locker room.
women's locker room. It'll free up some indoor space to house trucks. Not enough, but more than now.
A loft to keep parts inside instead of outside.
So Chris, can we do what we've done in the past, since we've got 5, 6 people that are now? Can we move this through infrastructure so we keep the process moving and ratify it at the council meeting? Good question. Oh, 5 hours. So are you all right with that? I'm fine. I just think we need to keep this process moving along, not just for this project, but as it relates to number 13 project. And if we wait until the next borough council meeting, now we've lost another 3 weeks to get started. So I will make a recommendation that we approve the award, get the process going to get the architectural drawings and so on done for a cost of $80,000. And then ratify it at the public works building. I'll make that, at the borough council meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to move forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward with getting the redesign done for the building to get it prepared to go out for bids, and let's hope it comes in at a reasonable price.
Like 1 million.
That would be nice.
I know, I'm being overly optimistic.
Does anybody else want to have any discussion about the public works garage? Okay. Why missing trailblazing signage?
And then approve the things, if you approve the reduced signage layout, and I think all the funds for that can come out of the North Park Road, Linus Boulevard, proposed fund that Equus and Wawa set up to do any improvements necessary, so it won't cost the borough anything. At the end of the day,
Take that off of there.
we need authorization to put them out.
Oh.
I don't think we ever did that, did we?
I thought we did it the last
I thought we did
infrastructure
too.
meeting,
Oh, okay.
council just approved it last week.
Alright, well, let's,
What do
then we can take it
I
off.
do need, sort of have
The
something,
plan.
but if you have the plan, I'll order, start ordering some.
So that can come off the agenda finally too.
If we're not paying for it, we can hire
We should
somebody.
get somebody else to do it.
No, good point.
What?
That can come off the agenda too.
And I wrote remove, that's all.
Okay, so number 16, you would think they'd come up with a better name, but.
Let's
find
start
out.
with rats.
Rats?
I run the county planning commission since 2001, and I can't stand when we say rats at the meeting.
So, the borough was sent the letter about the long-term traffic improvement plan and if we want any potentially eligible projects to be included.
If I could just say this too, that the State Hill Road thing that's going on now
This.
came out of this 10, 15 years ago. You know, it's for big scope.
We should replace it.
And keep in mind, it has to be for PennDOT, so you're really looking at Park, State Hill, the highways, Bruce Bridge?
One and two.
No.
Old Mill Road Bridge. The Old Mill Road Bridge is, so there are two long span bridges that PennDOT inspects for us every 2 years, old pot speed bridges, which they don't really do anymore because they're not good. The borough, what, 15 years ago, did some work to them, put a membrane to keep the water from penetrating. But eventually, they're gonna have to be replaced, and that's something you may wanna think about asking them to put on that long range project, so we're not saddled with a couple $1 million bridge replacement projects down the road, and if they can do them under the tip, then it's not the borough owns the two bridges, but it's not the borough doing the replacements.
I just don't know if this is only for state highway work. I didn't
I
read it.
thought I saw in here that bridges are
Look,
eligible.
some bridges, it said local county bridges somewhere in the
Greater than
email,
20 feet.
as long as they have them over 20-foot span.
Yeah,
Yeah, there it is. Municipal bridges is greater than 20 feet. So, and we've done Jim's done a good job of keeping us off the deteriorated bridge list by things that have been done to those bridges over the years, but
Won't last forever.
they're not, they don't have another 20 years in them, I can tell you that. And by the time the PennDOT gets around to doing this tip, we're probably looking at 10 to 15 years from now.
So who needs to do what with this?
You would need to make a recommendation to council to approve responding to the request to include those two bridges, to ask that they be included in the next transportation improvement plan.
Fred made the motion,
Just for the
Michelle
minutes,
said.
do we have clarity of what the bridge is?
Old Mill Road.
When we do the inspection, they have some sort of official.
They're PennDOT designated a bridge number on each report.
But they're both on Old Mill, just
Yeah.
for Melissa's sake.
They're both Old Mill.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second
You need to get one.
to recommend to council to move forward with getting the information to respond to this request from PennDOT. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
I can only think of one bridge in Old Mill.
The one by the pool?
The one you go over, you don't even know you're going over, it's at Evans. It's really a box culvert, not really a bridge per se. I mean, how you wanna describe it,
You were paving at Old Mill there.
just that very end piece,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Resident wants to donate a water fountain.
I was contacted by a new resident who moved here recently, who has offered funding up to $10,000, give or take, to install a fountain in the parklands. After talking this over with Jim, he did determine a location. Roughly, if you're familiar with where the bicycle repair station is between the pool and the Wyomissing Foundation, in that general vicinity, there's limited water mains in the parkland, so there's limited places we could actually put a fountain. But after some back and forth, Jim looked on CoStars and found a model of fountain that includes not only the water bottle, but also the pet bowl at the bottom. Mr. Francola likes that option and is agreeable to it. He did want to be here today, unfortunately, he is out of town and was unavailable. So this would be a motion for council to approve the installation of a water fountain in the parkland, subject to all costs being paid by the resident.
And we don't, Jim, you don't foresee any long-term maintenance issues?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that'll be screwed up.
We
It'll
have
be-
one
yeah.
now out by the Parks
It'll-
Barn.
It'll be
that was just-
vandalized, this and that,
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, it's.
What about freezing in the winter?
We can drain it in the wintertime, but that's not an issue, but there'll be vandalism.
The gentleman who moved into Birdland, and he was very,
And you're just gonna have it right down across from the foundation and that,
Across the street?
It'll be right on the blacktop trail there somewhere. Blacktop trail on
North side.
the north side.
yeah, on the
Same side
north
as the
side,
bike
right
area.
down from the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, across from the parking lot, in that area.
Alright.
Yeah, I always donate it, as long as Jim doesn't object to the long-term maintenance issues.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna have it.
Yeah, I'd rather not do it, but if he's giving us $10,000, what are you gonna do?
It's a nice property.
Is the one on the Parks Barn, is that even working?
It wasn't working, it's working now.
And there's one at Happy Hollow that works, but it's a little leaky and in the process of being fixed.
No, that's,
I think
yeah,
that
that
fixed
works
it.
in there.
So we have a motion to approve the, recommend to council to accept the guy's money for a water fountain.
Right. So,
We have a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
crush it.
Okay, we'll recommend to council to accept that. So, Jim, I guess you need to talk about this next one. I read the
Yeah.
letter and I saw the pictures. What's the,
Yeah.
Well, you all remember the start of this where a resident wanted these
Yep.
ramps there. It is true that I didn't give them a heads up that the day those ramps were getting started. On any street work, I communicate a lot with paving and driveway access, as we're doing now on Squire and Logan and Greenbrier, but I generally don't when we're installing handicap ramps. Maybe I should, I can from here on out, it's not a big deal. But to say it was unannounced, I mean, he knew it was coming, I just didn't give him a day when it was started. And I look at that picture there and I don't have enough proof. I went out and looked at them the other day and those handicap ramps look good, they're fine. When I say that picture, there's that, see that coil of,
That's Bass Bridge.
that's Fast Bridge. So maybe, I'm just surmising some of this lawn deterioration could be Fast Bridge too. I can't say that.
He, when I
certainly.
talked to him on the phone, he said absolutely not,
Okay.
that,
Well, I'll take his
well, that's what
word
his
for it.
letter says too. His
Yeah.
letter says
Yeah.
that they didn't do that.
Yeah. What I find ironic about this is, and I didn't realize it until I went out there to look at them again, is the whole intent of this was crosswalks, and I guess I failed. There's no lines on the street, there's no crosswalk lines. And that didn't seem to be an issue with any of the residents there, which I find kind of ironic, but we will put the crosswalk lines on here shortly. It just got forgotten. The ramps are in, but there's no actual crosswalks. Yeah, there's a crack or two in it. You can't expect not to have that. I mean, we can caulk them or something. Grass restoration, we held, it's ironic because we held retention into the spring. We just paid it like a month or two ago for grass. If the grass doesn't come up, and nobody called or complained about grass, so we paid the retainage. It's a
Until
constant,
now.
it's a constant, that grass restoration is a constant problem whenever we put in a fire hydrant, a handicap ramp, a sidewalk program. Some people want it back perfect, some people understand that it takes a little bit of their TLC also. He's not looking for any money, he's just looking
No,
for us
I
to
think
change
he
our
is.
ways.
no, I talked to him on the phone and he said, like you said in his letter, he is not asking for any money. He really just wanted to bring attention to the committee that, your tax dollars are being paid for inferior work. He's on vacation this week, I invited him to come and speak for himself. He was extremely appreciative that I called to let him know I received the letter and that the committee was gonna discuss his concerns. He's gonna call me next week when he's back in town, but he said really he just wants the committee to understand the borough paid a lot of money for this work, it should have been inspected and done correctly.
Before you go out and paint the crosswalk, you better let them know you're coming.
Yeah.
So, at this point, do we need to take any action, or we just tell him thank you?
I mean, I don't know what action you can take, we already paid and released retainage, is there any warranty in the contract that they have to come back within a time period?
It's so minor, it is so minor. I encourage you guys to go out and look at it and go, oh, there's a good looking handicap ramp.
Where is it? What's the?
Near
Is
the
that
Wine
the
Missing Hills.
pictures are-
Deborah,
Is that the picture you sent her?
I yeah, here's what they look like today.
So I mean, he's complaining about like the filler in here,
Well,
it sounds
that's
like.
expansion joint.
That's allowed to be above.
You need
That's-
But I mean, I think, so maybe some of that too is having a conversation with him to educate him on why that stuff is there.
That's his biggest complaint about the ramps.
Some cracking, how the sidewalk was connected.
I mean, when we inspect those, I mean, we're making sure the curb's 24 inches deep, that slope is 8.3%, and the top is 2%, and the sidewalks, 4 inches of stone, 4 inches of concrete. Yes, you'll get some cracking.
Recommendations to the,
Just tell them to go out and look at it, with the crosswalks and move on.
thank him for bringing it to his attention, taking into consideration for future projects and
Maybe caulk
maintaining
those
the tracks.
cracks, Jim. Maybe that will,
Say that again?
maybe caulk those cracks.
We will.
Yeah.
Just so he knows that,
Yeah.
yeah.
But he's not asking for reimbursement.
No.
I'm just concerned with that, about setting a precedent to
Yeah.
do that.
Listen,
Okay, why missing boulevard improvements, why missing boulevard improvements northbound at Penn Avenue?
So, after one of the meetings, somebody asked me about this, and this has like been a thing that Jim and I have been talking about for a long time.
Ron
Well,
was worried about
I
this.
was, I know who it was, I was just leaving the person nameless. Jim and I have actually been talking about this for about 5 years, when we actually do something there, but there's a couple of things that can be done really easily. The one is, there's a car that parks every day at the corner of Lincoln, and there's another car that parks every day at the corner of Cleveland. And what those two cars do is they don't let anyone get in the right-hand lane to go up and make the right onto Penn Avenue. And then people actually try and get over and realize, oh, the car's there, and it creates a mess. So we could either make that no parking at all from there up to Penn, or we could have no parking during the peak hours, like 7 to 9, 3 to 5 type of thing. The other part is to lengthen the length of the left turn lane, because we're getting about 4 cars in there now. We were gonna do that the next time we had to pave the boulevard, would be to lengthen that island back so we could get 10 or 12 cars in there out of the way to make the left and not back up the straight through traffic. But the big thing in the morning is those 2 cars right there eliminate that right turn lane that's there to get all the traffic going out. And if you get that out, I come up there, I never drive the same way, so I can't be killed, but by terrorism. That's a joke. That's a joke. But I drive up there probably once every week. I go up that way, and I notice that every morning that somebody stops, you know, and it creates this gap, and they miss the light to let the one car come around the parked car.
So this was brought up to me in conjunction with the roundabout at
Penn.
Penn, meaning, okay, so they're only worried about widening State Hill Road and everything on the north side, but what about the south side, and what effect is having a traffic circle instead of a traffic circle instead of a traffic signal going to have on everything that happens between Museum and Penn? And I would assume PennDOT would be looking at both sides.
For 150 feet from the roundabout, it's all the way back on the south side.
We actually, I'm assuming it's still on our 5-year plan, we probably have a number for this, but there's the possibility if we
It's
wanted to
staggered
do it in a year or
Right.
2, that it would be for nothing, because 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, State Hill Road and Penn will change that intersection.
Right, but it's kind of like a two-phase thing. The one, just by getting rid of the parking, whether you council or plan infrastructure wanted to do it permanently all day, every day, or just during the, like a
Peak.
7 to 9, 3 to 5, or 4 to
How
6.
many, car parking spaces would be lost by making.
Well, really, nobody parks there except these two cars that park right at those two intersections. And then in the church uses the handicap spaces, and they have two handicap spaces on the street, which is really odd, but,
All the parents use that for drop off and pick up.
Right, they
But
park
it's
all
way
around.
down
right,
It's in front of the
Yeah.
Atonement.
Yeah,
right. But at that point, by the time you're in front of
It gets back
Atonement,
up to
you,
Lincoln though, for sure.
yeah, Lincoln gets backed up past, and then that car right there. And then when it actually gets backed up back to Cleveland, and that car there causes that same issue. Because you could have two lanes of traffic there. The right-hand lane could get right and get out of the way, and then your left lane for that block and a half is your left turn and straight traffic.
My concern is if you would just block parking at one parking space and they move their vehicle back 18 feet, are you gonna have the same problem?
No, I'm saying make it all no parking that whole length from Penn Avenue back to Cleveland.
Or the whole block?
Or two blocks. From Penn to Lincoln, Lincoln to Cleveland, make it no parking. And that'll that'll let the right turn traffic get out of the way.
So you're talking about northbound only?
Yeah.
So how many houses?
There's really no issue
How many
with that.
About
residents?
3 houses.
Is that all?
About 3.
Four.
Through
Cleveland, between
Three or
Cleveland and Lincoln,
four.
4 or 5.
3 or 4.
maybe four,
hold on.
maybe four between Lincoln and Cleveland.
It's
Well,
really that,
if you go over the
that
Crest
corner
River.
property, which could just go on that corner.
Right, they can park,
Parties and the steeper.
both of them can park on the side street and be out of the way.
Yeah,
Because you can park on both Lincoln and Cleveland.
and it's the corner property where that person.
Where that person, they park right there at the
So it's the
corner.
resident that's parking there.
Yeah.
It's residents.
It's
Yeah.
that
It's
resident,
right here.
there.
There's a Subaru, I think it is parked here almost every day.
and then back at Cleveland, it's like the same house, like the other side of Cleveland.
It's
Yeah.
5, oh, you're on the side.
Just the property there,
Down Weston Boulevard, down those pools far enough to see.
Right.
I'm looking to see how many of these people have driveways.
that one there parks in front of the house, and it's both of the ends of that
See it
block.
right there.
Car's probably there, yep. They park it overnight. Because it's there when I come in at 4:30 in the morning
Yeah,
or
This car's almost
8:30.
They're always
always
there.
here.
Yeah, that car's there a lot.
Yeah, so.
But you can park right on the side, I mean, they're the corner, it's their car, you park right there.
Is that a one-way?
No.
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 Jim, I also mentioned to you when we were talking about this, is to paint have a lane line painted farther back,
Right.
farther south.
You could extend the lane line painting to
Because
show.
people don't even know there's two lanes,
No,
Right.
they're all over the place,
they're too far right, and then you can't scoot down. can't you?
or it's dangerous.
Yeah, so I think the one is kind of a not very costly fix, it's some signage and no parking and striping. The second one is paving and, new curb and things, but.
So are you is someone asking this committee to make a
Ron
recommendation?
Stanko asked me to put this on the infrastructure agenda and discuss it and ask for a recommendation.
So what's the police department and public works
I
thoughts?
would think you might wanna punt it to fire and police.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. At least to get input.
So you want no parking all the way down in front of Atonement?
No, I'm saying to do that.
Traffic.
Ron said, what's the
Right.
solution? And I said, the problem is,
I mean, all
It's
those
not
the whole
parents of
problem,
the
it's a
Atonement
good
kids are
portion.
gonna like lose their mind.
There's a parking lot right
they
there.
just did that
I
huge
know.
parking lot
Yeah, they can
expansion.
drop them off. They're just
Yeah, but
gonna
they
park-
like to pull up right up front and go
They
in there.
do.
They're just gonna park
They
there
just
anyway.
wanna run in, they don't wanna go to the parking lot and have to walk
Yes.
all the way down.
The other week, this was blocked.
I'm just telling you,
all the way to the
parents
circle.
What?
It's just
And then I
really
thought,
inefficient.
whole bunch, I said, what in God's name is going on?
Oh, some morning it was blacked out
Yeah.
5 or 6 blocks back.
This was like
Yeah.
4:30 in the afternoon.
The problem that you're gonna have is unless you're willing to go out there and patrol it and start writing tickets, parents are gonna park there anyway, whether you put no parking there anyway.
It's the
They're gonna stop
yeah,
and they're
it's
gonna
the
pick up their
resident-
kids.
It's the residents.
If
that
you're
are-
gonna put, if
are
you're gonna
more
put a
involved.
sign,
Or at least
it needs to,
have it
it needs to
closed
be
for
a
parents.
no stop standing or
Yeah.
parking sign. Because parking means that they've gone in and they're in there for an extended
Right.
amount of time. Standing would be, I'm dropping somebody off, my kid, picking my kid up. So if it says no parking, that's one thing, but if they're standing and they're not in violation of that sign. So we would have to have a no stop standing
But
parking.
is this something that's,
Loitering.
is this something that's warrants
this kind of action for the short periods of time when it occurs?
You wanna put it to fire and police, or you want me to talk about it now?
You don't need to stop it's on the permit.
That's what I mean.
No, you don't need to do that, the parking, the traffic still flows,
Yeah.
it's back
Right.
where.
So
So
this
the two hundred
is-
block of Wyoming
This
is back.
is borough residents that are parking in front of their homes.
No, I get that, but are we talking also about the church?
No.
No.
We're not,
I
so that's
don't-
not,
I don't
that's
think-
not on the table.
Yeah.
The church has
Yeah.
two, the
No,
church
that's
has,
quite enough.
the
No,
church
that
only
has-
has 2 handicap parking spaces.
I'm
The
talking about
people that are stopping and
saying-
dropping are doing it
No, it's
legally in a crosshatch zone.
Yeah, it's almost
So-
like a fire lane.
They have a fire lane, no parking, no stopping there now, they
But they're
still
doing it
drop
anyway.
off.
Yeah.
So
But-
we're not gonna,
But that isn't the issue that causes the traffic backup.
okay.
Because that's in the section where the lane's already flaring out to give you the right turn. There's enough room for a car, 2 cars to pass
Yeah,
it
you got two cars.
when they're doing that. It's from there back to Cleveland that's the
You
issue.
gotta be sensitive about why Mr. residents not being able to park in front of
Well,
their own
right,
house.
that's just
So
fine.
could,
That's another issue altogether,
but shouldn't we
That's gonna
start
be a big
with
issue.
painting,
especially for the.
so the cars have a better idea of where to stay in line? I would start there.
Yeah.
Alright, to me, for an infrastructure, I think you're looking at making that road a little wider, that might be narrowing that island.
Did you
That's,
talk about
that's
that
what we're
too?
gonna do for
I was
the,
gonna
for
be
the left turn
part
lane.
of the work.
Right, but I'm talking back further, there's islands back there between Cleveland and Lincoln.
Oh, going
You
on.
make that narrower, cars will be able to go around those.
How about take out the island completely?
I think the first island between Penn and Lincoln, you might have to take it out.
And just make it sure, take it out.
I mean, between Penn and
You
Lincoln,
show
like,
that picture again, it's not, it's like this
I'm
wide.
gonna have
That's
to
a bigger,
go
that's a
back
bigger,
to it.
that's a bigger project
Takes
than
me
some
out of-
signs and lines right there.
We took that on like that.
if you make it as narrow as you did on Wellington Boulevard, you still have an island if that's what you want. Cars are gonna be able to go around, the parked cars on their houses.
What are your thoughts on that, Jim?
Well,
It's
that's,
Jim or Jim?
that's certainly gonna work, but I mean, that's a,
Yes, it's a much bigger
That's a-
project.
That's a project.
that's a six number project, not a,
This whole thing out.
See, that's.
$10,000.
Talk about walking that way.
So widen this, but take all of this out.
I'm not talking about that.
what are you
You're talking about the next block.
I'm talking between Lincoln and Cleveland. Is that,
Well, you
again,
have
that's,
to take the other section out if you're doing Lincoln and Cleveland.
What's
We can't widen it, neck them back in and widen out again. If we're gonna do Lincoln and Cleveland, we gotta do Cleveland to Penn. We can't do the second block, not do the first.
I assume you wouldn't do this until you know what,
And
The
that's
circle.
and that's gonna do with the circle.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's gonna be
I
10
think
years.
Janet's right,
That's
maybe
the-
we
that's the
start
other
with
crux.
painting.
Yeah, it sounds to me between the PennDOT thing and cost constraints that, why not just start with the new parking, see what happens? That's my thought.
Well, here's a question, if you took out those islands, would that help your case with PennDOT and the design of intersection improvements?
No.
It wouldn't,
No, for PennDOT's purposes, you want more crashes, more reportable, non-drivable crashes.
Oh, great.
That's what you want. Vendors, they don't care about it. It has to be when people really get injured. That's the only thing that matters in their studies.
Well, why don't we kick, the parking over to fire and police?
Okay. There you go on that meeting.
Thank you. Is there any old business to be brought?
I don't think it's old business or not, but we never talked about the joint municipal authority in infrastructure, why not?
For sewer? I mean, Dave, what's your thing?
Pardon?
Is the sewers on?
Yeah,
We talk about them when there's something to talk about.
when? When's the last time, I don't remember talking about the joint municipal authority.
When we send them
Was
sewers,
last
they send us a
year.
bill. That's, I mean, unless they have something going on jointly with them, which has been a while.
Do you know anything about them?
The last thing I remember
I know
talking
how-
about them is when
I
we
know
just
that's
appoint
right.
somebody
Yeah.
to the board who I think
I
is
know
named
about
Albert
it. You
White.
know anything about it?
Yeah.
I don't,
We get the
I
bids.
guess, why isn't it on our agenda?
It never has been, to the best of my knowledge, other than when we had to appoint somebody to the board, which I believe our current rep is Arthur White. I think he was appointed in 2019, 2020 for a 6-year term. That was just renewed.
Well, I know we're part of the joint authority, and I guess isn't
We
it
get it.
analogous
We
to
get
the
every
Western
report for
Berks
them, right?
Water
Yeah, they're in your,
Yeah.
they're in your
Yeah,
council
it's
package
in the
when you
packet.
get them.
Alright, I don't know.
It's in the council packet. If there's something that we need to take action or discuss, we add it to info, but we don't have it as a standing report, because there's generally nothing to discuss.
We could ask Dave Wisser to come in twice a year, or quarterly or something.
We know nothing about them. Just a question, I don't understand why. Can you say the same thing about Western Berks or water? Well, they have nothing to discuss, but don't put it on the agenda,
Well, we didn't used to have it on the agenda every month. We've had it on the
I
last
think-
couple of years because all the interconnect stuff and then the additional sampling, the log for chlorine residual.
Yeah, it's
So
a
there's-
lot more.
So the last like 4 years, there's been something like every quarter for the water authority, the water company, so we've been keeping them on consistently. There hasn't been action in probably 6 years on anything to do with the joint authority.
I think,
Sewer authority.
I think Western Berks started becoming an agenda item when they came to us about the chlorination and
Yeah.
the potential for the
And
booster
I
pump.
think it should be, I'm not arguing against getting them off the agenda, I'm not arguing that at all, I agree.
Well, I mean, we can put them on there, but every month is gonna be, we have nothing to discuss, so.
There were years when we always had an agenda item relating to the city of Reading sewer plant upgrade, and that was connected to JMA. Because
Right.
our negotiations with the city of Reading depended on the availability and capacity at the JMA treatment plant. So I would say there were several years where we had regular discussions about sewer, but that has not been recent.
And the sewage is different from water in that the only time we would need discussion is when we come to say we're running out of capacity. With water, there's so much,
Oh, yeah, I'm not
Or-
gonna compare the two, I'm just talking about the joint municipal authority. I don't like the same thing either.
There's been nothing to talk about.
Well,
I mean, we do the agenda, put the rough agenda together, we can have ahead of the meeting, and we all check if anybody's got anything from any of the other authorities, and there's never anything from the joint sewer authority.
We can call it the shitty committee and get the order.
would it be on the committee? Would
Someone's
it-
gonna do
The shitty
Why
committee.
don't we do this, why don't, for the next
Please put that in the
infrastructure
minutes.
meeting, include a copy of the most recent report and just add it to the agenda, just put it on there, so that everybody can look at the report. Maybe we don't look at it and just say, this isn't necessary, or, yeah, we wanna include it on.
Do they issue monthly reports?
This is in the council packs.
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
I believe
They only meet quarterly.
They only meet quarterly?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're probably gonna be in June again.
I feel like there were March meeting minutes that were in the April council packet.
I know, I've seen it in the council
Yeah,
packet.
December,
Great. They only meet
December,
quarterly.
March.
I believe so.
All right, anything else under old
There's no one
business?
this month.
Anybody have any new, I'm sorry,
Old business, are we gonna add the park and shade information like once in a while into this meeting?
So that committee is not officially disbanding until the end of the year.
Okay.
So at the July Park and Shade Committee meeting, commission meeting, I will let them know they're effectively done at the end of the year. And then, yes, I would think, whether it's
Yeah.
quarterly or just as items come up, that will become part of this agenda.
anybody have any new business to be brought up?
I would ask that at some point infrastructure look at things in the park, like benches, picnic tables, I sent Michelle some pictures this morning, I just think so, that thing's been falling apart for years. And if you look at this bench, this has had the curl in it for years, you can see how you get splinters if you sit on the thing. At 9:30 in the morning, the parking lot was full and people were parking on the street. This is a heavily used place and
I don't know as it needs to be an agenda item, but I agree with you, some of those types of things need improvement.
yeah, there's no excuse.
Okay,
So I don't know, whether it's been budgeted,
well, none of those things look like they cost a lot of money to fix,
no, they don't.
so.
And we can fix them ourselves, right, Jim?
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Replace.
And Rob and I have talked about, as far as benches go, getting rid of wooden benches, and, no, they cost $1,000 a piece, but getting more
Western.
composite.
Yeah.
Composite.
Yeah.
You hate splitters.
So you wanna look into that, Jim?
Yeah, well, we will have an item in next to the 2024 budget for some of that stuff. We've
Do we have to wait?
talked about it briefly.
We have to wait.
No, I mean, if it needs.
Something like that we can put a new board on, you know.
I mean, at least let's make it look better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks,
That's all.
You don't need a budget item for putting
No.
some new board.
that's regular maintenance, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly not.
All right,
Yeah.
any other new business?
Thank you, Jim.
Motion to